prosper. The long-term case for Bitcoin. The Lindy effect posits that the longer something has been around, the longer it's likely to stay around. Bitcoin could have failed already, yet it hasn't. For each day Bitcoin remains standing, its chances for long-term survival increases. Bitcoin will see greater regulation, which will bring greater innovation, which will bring in greater adoption. From where things stand, Bitcoin is an all-or-nothing technology leaning closer to all than nothing. Regulation and policy. Regulatory oversight will undoubtedly create winners and losers as governments decide how they want to steer the crypto industry. Should quantitative easing continue unabated, one can expect more countries to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, strengthening the case for Bitcoin as money. If hyper-Bitcoinization is the future, so is crypto regulation. When El Salvador decided to make Bitcoin legal tender, I think it's going to take a while for its ramifications to really take effect. Because on the one hand, it raises the viability that there will be hyper-Bitcoinization, this adoption of using Bitcoin as the standard, right? To account with it. But at the same time, the other issue is that it can create beef with entities that don't want to see that happen, perhaps. We already saw that when El Salvador initially mentioned or tried to get help from the Bank of International Settlements, from the IMF, they said, nah. They turned them down because it goes against their current control structure. As we talked about in the wealth section, these entities, the World Bank, IMF, Bank of International Settlements, they basically come in as a loan shark in times of desperation with countries, and then they say, okay, cool. You need money. That ain't nothing to us. You ain't said nothing but a word. We can go ahead and give you some shekels, but we're going to need you to do this, and this, and that. And in most instances, countries that are desperate for the funding, for the help, they comply. But they then basically become attached to the puppeteer strings of these larger entities. And by El Salvador opting to pivot and make Bitcoin legal tender, they could eventually put themselves in a better position, not just because if they put Bitcoin onto the balance sheet of the country, they stand to make a lot of money down the road should Bitcoin continue to go up in value. They could effectively solidify or take the big step that could get them closer to financial freedom, thus removing their pawn status on the global stage. And once El Salvador made this move, you then saw Brazil, Argentina, several other countries begin to hint that they're considering doing a similar thing. And so El Salvador really was a domino that fell, and time will tell how far this trend goes. But regardless, regulation and a law that makes Bitcoin legal tender is a form of regulation in conjunction with regulations from entities like FinCEN and the SEC in the United States will also help further entrants come into the space, providing new solutions, new technologies, new services and products to help out the space because they're no longer fearful of regulation backfiring to their demise. Now, regulation can supercharge app and product innovation for Bitcoin. Greater guidance clears the way for greater competition and thus greater choice for Bitcoin ETFs, ETPs, 401ks, IRAs, etc. Innovative savings accounts, credit, debit cards, payment systems, and integrations, and more are possible and probable once policymakers provide informed Bitcoin and crypto guidelines. So similarly, we actually see that Elizabeth Warren came out and she said July 28th, SEC, y'all need to have some guidelines. And it's funny because the day this was announced, there was a wider downturn across the markets. The S&P 500 was down 1%, I believe. And Ethereum tumbled by like 10% on the day. Part of me was like, whoa, was this a result of people being worried that the regulation will not be favorable? But at the same time, what I think is interesting is that it didn't even occur to me that somebody else inside of government would come and put a timeline on these regulations being figured out. But I think ultimately it's a net positive thing because it means sooner than later, then there will be some stance. It will either be, okay, this ship is sinking because the regulation is overly taxing, it's overly controlling, or it will allow the rest of the market to really run because then it's like, okay, cool. Boom, boom, boom. We got it. Green light. Let's run. And effectively, we're going to see the market, in my opinion, go either way once this regulation comes into play. And it's going to have downstream effects no matter which way it goes, whether it leans on the more laissez-faire side or if it leans on the more control-dominating side. We will have to see. Now, social drivers. Large-scale social behaviors will dominate Bitcoin's fate. The halving cycle drives price while incentivizing network security. Status gains and the desire for acceptance will push Bitcoin operations and crypto businesses to go carbon negative, accelerating green energy use. More interest in Bitcoin and crypto means more investments towards educating consumers about the technology and its possibilities. Such knowledge may drive Bitcoin adoption when compared against CBDCs. So when we look at an institution like Argo Blockchain, we look at what Elon Musk and Michael Saylor put together with the Bitcoin Mining Council, the debate that Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk are going to have in July. It's an understanding that Bitcoin has to figure out the energy consumption thing. And granted, there's plenty of other industries, technologies that use a lot of energy, but that's not the dog in the fight we're discussing. The reality of the matter is, before institutions really ape in, they need to see that Bitcoin fits into some type of compliance for energy usage. Because a lot of these companies have mandates for energy usage and green technologies, right? Because of the political nature. And I'm not saying there's not a scientific backing behind it, but the science has put the politics in such a position where it seems the best way to arrive at the desired outcome of there being a green planet and a planet that one can inhabit for millennia to come is being pushed by the politics of corporations, of businesses, of countries. And as such, Bitcoin and the greater crypto market is going to need to get in line with those politics or face demise, right? And so we see a lot of these actions already taking place and solutions being proposed, which I think net is very positive. It's more so just the timeline on these things and who are going to be the dominant players and how does that work itself out. And you can even see here, Kevin O'Leary, he's a big-time investor, also speaks about the importance of Bitcoin being able to go green. We'll end it on this little quote. We tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. Roy Amara.